billion, pardon me, for all this land. So that's a little bit concerning. Want to go to the next slide? Okay, so this project is deemed to be of national interest, and really it's only Eastern Ontario and Quebec. They're looking at trains, they say, that will depart every 30 minutes. So that's a lot. That's almost 72 passenger trains a day. They're saying it's going to have maybe a 12-foot high fencing. There's going to be surveillance cameras and drones. Now, when I went to the South Frontenac Alto presentation, they said they had drones up on there, and I questioned that. I said, how can you have drones? And the guy said, oh, we're going to run them along the tracks. I said, that's got like a 360-degree camera. Like, I'm concerned. So when I went to the Perth meeting, that slide was gone. And they just said, oh, it's only if we have an emergency, we'll send out a drone down the track. So, just to let you know. They're also saying the track's going to be 30 meters wide with a 60-meter wide clearance. And this train is going to have no railway crossings whatsoever. It's just going to go from point A to point B. Next slide. So this is just what you think it could look like. As you can see, the track is 30-meter wide. This is what they're supposedly saying. It's going to be 60 meters. But it will probably be wider than that because you're going to have construction. You're going to have little electrical buildings all along the side there. They have to get their power. So I'm going to do the next slide. So it's possible that construction phase will need a wider swath of land. So here's some examples of other high-speed rails that are being built. Next. So there's 3 ways to move the HRS train. The first way is by land at grade. It's the cheapest to build. The next one is a viaduct or bridge. It's a uniform span. It uses less land. Wildlife and people can move freely, and you're preserving valuable farmland and natural ecosystems in an ideal situation. The last one is tunnels, and they are the most challenged. They have to utilize a tunnel boring machine, and they require a larger clearance for aerodynamics, and they are the priciest. Okay? And these are the projected dates for construction. So as you can see, phase 1, Ottawa to Montreal, is going to be starting in 2029. You can already see people are up in arms about it. The Quebecers are ready, and they're fighting not to have it happen because they know what's happened in the past, Maribel Airport, and also in Ontario, the Pickering Airport. So we don't want history to repeat itself. Phase 2 is going to be Ottawa to Toronto and Peterborough, and they're saying 2032. Roughly 2 years once they're into phase. So these phases are going to be one after the other. They're not going to be finishing one and then going to the next. It's going to start every few years until it's finally finished. They're saying it's going to be finished by 2041 to 44, and the entire network will be fully complete by then. But I doubt it. Because look at California. Next one. So these, I don't know how well you can see it. It's not showing up very well.
Yeah, the projectors.
Okay, the projector's not showing that well. Anyhow, there's 2 possible routes. There's a northern route and there's a southern route.
How about if you turn off the lights?
Yeah, sure. Turn off the lights above.
They're behind the orange hat.
Okay, sorry. It's still not coming up very clear. Anyhow, it's not very clear still. Let's try the next one. That's good. Okay, that's amazing. Want to try the next slide? So anyhow, we have the northern route and the southern route. And why the southern route? Because it just comes down a loop. They need a 7-kilometer curve for a train going 300 kilometers per hour. So that's why they have it. Whereas compared to a highway, when you have an exit, it's only 1 kilometer you need for that curve span. Next. So these are just possible routes. Now, on the Cataraqui website on January 22nd, Alto did a presentation, and this is what they had to say. Our discussion today should focus on the use of a Cataraqui Trail as a corridor for high-speed rail system and not on the general importance and particularly practicality, of high-speed rail service in the area. So that says it right there, which is a little bit confusing. Anyhow, I just want to let you know the motion was put forth that they're against it. So, okay? Now I want to tell you why they chose a cat trail. This is the full length of the cat trail. You can see that they can kind of straighten it out, but when it's on a map, it does go for that curve. Okay, next. Now, the other option was hydro utility lines. I did reach out to Hydro to ask them some questions and they didn't get back to me, especially with a high-speed rail running in the hydro corridor. So these are the lines that we're looking at. We have this one that goes from here all the way down through Newborough, is a 230,000 kilovolt line. And then this other line that comes through here, right through Phillipsville and down across Highway 15, across Summers Road, is 500 kilovolts hydro line. And that's the only one in Eastern Ontario, actually, I just want to let you know, that has 500 kilovolts. It's running from Hawthorne, and it's running through Ottawa, and comes all the way down and goes to Kingston, and then goes along the 401, and then goes to Toronto, around that way. So, because this line comes, the Newborough line is out of the shaded zone. It keeps going out, and it goes across the provincial park, Frontenac Provincial Park, which is not included in the zone. Oh, you can't see it very well. Yeah. So I didn't put it in the regular township map. Keep going.
Are you going or?
A hydro train. It can't go. People think, oh, it can go between the hydro lines. It can't not go through the hydro lines. Even though they're double set, it can't go through. Also, excavation using heavy equipment is prohibited within 10 meters of the base of the hydro lines, unless they have written permission. Now, I did reach out to Hydro 1 and they didn't get back to me, so I want you to know, but they'd have to have a bigger minimum clearance if they're going to be near a line like that. There's also the overhead. These towers are 180 to 200 feet wide, so I actually think it would be a wider corridor if it goes through the hydro, if they're using that. Now, if they install secondary neutral conductors and have everything properly grounded, maybe not. So 60 meters, I think it's going to be a little bit more than that. Okay, next up. So, this is the area, and you see it on some of the maps. I've got it in all the libraries and at the township. I've just corridored. That's the corridor look, that's what they're looking at. So here's Shafie's Lock. That's part of the Cataractway Trail that goes all the way up. It's highlighted. This is the hydro line that's highlighted. And then there's a third possibility, Davis Lock. And the reason it's been brought on is because the hydro line straightens out a little bit, but it still goes up and down later on. But there is a straight. So really, once you hit Elgin, everything is flat. So they can do what they want. So it's going to be crossing over Highway 15. So that's probably the only one that's going to be guaranteed a pass, for sure. Overpass, underpass. Everybody says, oh, well, what about Highway 40? What about Country 42, Country Road 29? You have to remember, every township's going to have 2 to 3 roads they're going to need. Each one is going to cost so much money. And so that's something we have to bring to people's attention. And I'm going to pass it off to Zoe, and she'll be talking about that.
Okay, so I compiled lots of research. There are references sheets out on the table outside if you want to see where we got all of our information from. Like I said, we're not lawyers or ecologists, so bear with me. Some of the social factors that we need to consider about this project. There's only 2 different ways that we can get past the trail, the fences, because it has to be up at grade. So the first option is a grade separation, so we can either have an overpass or an underpass to get around the fences. The next option is that any roads that butt up against the rail fence will just be dead-ended. So obviously that's going to create a huge issue. The township is in charge of allocating which roads get continued on to bigger roads, so let's say Highway 15. So unfortunately, one other option to consider, we're going to use Indian Lake Road as our case study for this. So as you can see, this red line here, I'm not sure if you guys can see that very well, but the red line here is the Cataractway Trail. This road here is the Pinnacon Road. So anyone that lives on Indian Lake Road, because they have access to a public boat launch, Alto will not expropriate more land than they need, because they need to stay under budget. So anyone that lives, on this road will now be considered a cottage according to Alto. I know. Yes, you will essentially be landlocked. Now, again, the onus is on the township to create roads to, let's say, Indian Lake Road and an overpass or an underpass. But, like Wendy already mentioned, they're very, very expensive, so we don't know how many overpasses or underpasses there will be. Obviously, Pinnacon Road has tons of people that live down it, but we also need to consider that Opinicon Road is not the only road that you can take to get from Perth Road or Highway 15. So, in my opinion, I'm not exactly sure that there will be an overpass or an underpass anywhere on Opinicon Road. Next slide. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news on that one. So, other social factors to be considered: increased emergency response time, increased bus route time for public schools, increased time for road maintenance and snow removal, garbage and recycling pickup, and also potential decimation of parts or the whole of the Cataraqui Trail. We're a snowmobiling family, that's a huge priority for us, and I'm sure most of you also. We must also factor in construction time. During the many years of construction to build the 1,000-kilometer corridor, there will be many road reconfigurations due to temporary closures, detour routes, and access restrictions. There will be constant re-optimization of routes for emergency services, school bus routes, and snow removal and road maintenance. So I did do some looking into school bus routes and schools. STEO has an updated maximum one-way ride time of 75 minutes for elementary students and 90 minutes for secondary students. That's a really long time, and that's only going to get worse as soon as they start reconfiguring roads. Also, the school cashment system, the way that they determine whether or not your child gets to stay in the school that they're in is by road distance. So if we shoot a 15-foot fence all the way across Rideau Lakes, your kids may have to go to a different school. Expropriated families also face having to move outside of their school cashment, which means they may have to leave specialized programs like French immersion behind. Okay, don't shoot the messenger on this one. So this is emergency response time. I did some research, and this, you can't really see the table very well, but this is a quote from the Regional Fire Services report from United Counties Leeds and Grenville of 2021. Rowan, could you read that for us, potentially, because I can't see what it says. Just the top one?
It's the top paragraph on the right?
Yeah, here. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, guys.
We also don't do this a lot, so.
Hello, is it working?
Yes.
This begs the question, what can we do differently to enhance delivery of fire services and achieve positive outcomes? The strategy of saving more lives through faster response is, at best, a weak argument. In rural areas, this is particularly true given the reality of travel time impacted by road networks and physical barriers, rivers, lakes, and rail lines. That's a quote taken from Regional Fire Services report from Leeds and Grenville 2021.
Okay, so it's obviously pretty self-evident that if we create a 15-foot fence along the entire township of Rideau Lakes, our response times are going to get longer. This is a table taken from that same website. You can't see it, but down at the bottom, our Rideau Lakes Township, our response time is currently 29 minutes. Obviously, that's going to get a lot longer. We love our volunteer fire department. I'm not up here blasting anyone. I'm just bringing it to everyone's attention. So environmental factors are also pretty self-evident. If you send a train through really ecologically sensitive areas, there's going to be a lot of destruction. So we need to think about the species at risk, ecological corridors such as the A2A, which is the Algonquin to Adirondack parks, watershed disruptions, and construction concerns regarding blasting at our wells and our septic beds. Okay, so these, you can't see them unfortunately, but these are all of the 35 plus species that are at risk in our area and along the Rideau Canal. The 35 species that are at risk regularly occur at the Rideau Canal sites, including 6 species whose critical habitat is within more than 75% of the railway. It's important to note that no field studies have been done in the southern corridor. As per Alto presentation in Perth, no more field studies will be done until after the corridor has been selected. And, I know. And when I asked why, they told me that it would not be within their financial purview to do consultations before the day. Again, don't shoot the messenger. Go ahead. Okay, so this is the A2A from Algonquin Park to the Adirondacks. It is a critical ecological corridor which is vital for wildlife movement between the boreal forests of Canada and the Appalachian Mountains in the USA. Within the A2A is the Frontenac Arch Biosphere, which is a UNESCO site. It's recognized as the most biodiverse terrestrial region in Canada. Dividing this region with a 12 to 15 foot fence presents clear harms to migratory patterns of species, not to mention habitat destruction due to the construction. Go ahead, Rose. Okay, so this is our watershed, and our friends from the Rideau Watershed Land Trust, they just put out a letter to the Kingstonists, so thankfully they did that in time for me to do all this research, so thank you. So our township is packed with lakes, wetlands, rivers, and streams, all combined to make up our watershed. The watershed impacts the habitats of species at risk, lake levels, our well water, and farm drainage. Disruptions of this watershed due to massive HSR construction could cause flooding, contamination, and/or disruptions to our well water, quantity, and quality. Blasting during construction can cause issues to both our wells and septic systems, and also has no published plan to protect, monitor, compensate private well systems. So in doing my research, again, the references sheet has an amazing website that you can look through. It lists so many things that I don't understand. I had to read it probably 15 times. But there are certain types of rock, especially in South Frontenac, that it's kind of like Swiss cheese in my mind. If you drop contaminants down one side, the contaminants will go all the way to the Bay of Quinte, and there will be no stopping it. So go ahead. Okay, so this is a statement I keep hearing, and it's driving me crazy. It'll never happen. I've said it myself before I started doing all this research, and I started researching the Pickering Airport and the Mirabel Airport. These are some pictures. The top left one, which I thought was funny, is from Pickering. The Pickering people did a huge demonstration. I researched one of them, and a gentleman was hang gliding from the Parliament buildings. So that's where that picture's from. Go ahead. Okay, so this is a lot of information. I apologize. This is the Mirabel Airport site. In 1969, approximately 98,842 acres of land were expropriated by the federal government in Mirabel, which is just north of Montreal, with the intention of replacing the Dorval Airport. The land was mostly highly productive farmland, home to approximately 12,000 people. It's extremely important to note that the federal government expropriated 85% more land than they actually needed for the project. So here, this is the Mirabel Airport site. This is how much land they actually expropriated. So Mirabel Airport opened in 1975, but due to less travel demand than they initially expected, the airport was eventually demolished in 2014. Yeah. Until 2006, 11,000 acres of expropriated farmland was being rented back to the farmers that they originally owned, when the federal government offered to sell the land back to the original owners. In 2019, the federal government announced that it would be selling the last of the unused land back to the original owners or their descendants. I strongly urge you to read the horror stories of the people who experienced the expropriation presented by the Bloc MP. I've included it in the references, so if you want to go take a look at that. Okay, this is the Pickering Airport. In 1972, the federal government expropriated 18,600 acres of mostly Class 1 soil farmland to build the Pickering Airport. Shortly afterwards, the provincial government expropriated a further 25,000 acres to build a satellite city to support the airport. The airport project was paused in 1975 and officially scrapped in January of 2025. They never built this airport. The provincial land has mostly been sold back to former owners, and the remaining farmland has been developed or is slated to be developed. Half of the federal land has been given to Parks Canada, but the rest has been retained in limbo. And then I'm going to pass it off to Kat.
There are three acts of significance I'd like to highlight. The first is the Building Act in Bill C5 that was passed in 2025. Its framework designates certain infrastructure projects, including the high-speed rail, as projects of national interest. It gives the federal government the authority to fast-track them. The second is the Expropriation Act of 1985, which provides a mechanism by which the Canadian government can compulsorily acquire private land for public purposes. The third is the proposed High-Speed Rail Network Act and Bill C-15. It provides amendments to the Expropriation Act. These amendments would give the corporation, Alto, the power to acquire land with limited rights of appeal. Bill C-15 was recently passed in the House of Commons and is now before the Senate for second review. And I believe the second review is supposed to be happening tomorrow. Next slide. I would like to touch on some highlights of the Expropriation Act. It's quite lengthy. I'm not going to go through it in its entirety. It states that the expropriation must serve a public purpose. The Crown may only expropriate land if the Minister of Public Works and Government Services determine it is required for a public work or public interest project. The corporation is to buy the land voluntarily before taking it by compulsory acquisition. Expropriation is meant to be a last resort. The landowners are entitled to procedural fairness. The Act provides structured steps, a notice, timelines, the right to object, and a hearing of necessity. The hearing is chaired by a neutral decision maker whose sole job is to assess whether the taking of land is necessary for the stated public purpose. Landowners are entitled to be made economically whole through compensation that covers the property's market value and related damages such as disturbance, relocation costs, and impacts on the remaining land. When private property rights are infringed upon, the courts interpret the Act in favor of those whose rights are affected. Next slide, please. The current expropriation process is fairly straightforward, but it doesn't make it any less upsetting for the people affected. The Crown registers a notice of intention describing the land and its intended public use. The notice must be served to the landowner, registered in the appropriate land registry, and published in the Canada Gazette and local newspaper. Affected parties have 30 days from the Canada Gazette publication to file a written objection. If a written objection is filed, a hearing officer conducts a public hearing and submits a report to the minister. This is called a hearing of necessity. If the minister decides to proceed, a notice of confirmation is registered, at which the title transfers to the Crown. This is the moment that the land legally changes hands, even though the owner may still be in possession. Within 90 days of confirmation, the Crown must make a written offer of compensation to the owner. Next slide, please. So, compensation under the Expropriation Act. The landowner is entitled to the following: market value, the amount the land would likely be in an open market between a willing buyer and seller. Compensation for costs or losses resulting from the move, such as relocation or business disruption in the event of full expropriation. Compensation or damages to the property, such as removal of landscaping or fencing. Payment for the reduction of value in any remaining land kept by the owner. For example, if your house has a 50-foot setback and they expropriate land to put a utility road in through your front lawn, and your setback is now 20 feet, you can get compensated for that. Additional value for elements unique to the owner's use of the land beyond what the open market would pay. This is called special economic advantage. An example of this would be integrated farm operations, like barns, fencing, laneways, storage, that lose value if separated. It can also mean long-established drainage, irrigation, or tile systems, or the proximity to leased or owned lands that operate as a single unit. Courts recognize that farms are economic systems, not just parcels of land. Reimbursement for legal and appraisal costs incurred while asserting a claim is also, you can get compensated for. These professional fees are not normally paid until everything is settled, so try to find a lawyer who will work on a retainer and deferred payment. Next slide. So now we're going to talk about the High-Speed Rail Network Act that's in Bill C-15 in front of the Senate now. This act is set out in Part 5, Division 1 of the Omnibus Bill BC-15. The act is designated to expedite land acquisition for the Ontario-Quebec Rail Corridor by changing expropriation procedures and bypassing standard Canada Transportation Agency reviews. The Expropriation Act is, as a whole, remains intact for other ordinary federal projects. So this High-Speed Rail Network Act is just specific to what we're facing today. As I mentioned, Bill C-15 is currently before the Senate for review, and then from there it goes on for royal assent. Once this occurs, Bill C-15 becomes law. As I mentioned, it's in second reading tomorrow, and I looked it up. The Standing Senate Committee on National Finance is scheduled to discuss the Bill C-15 this Tuesday and Wednesday as well. It's imperative that we don't delay writing emails to the Senate members. So if you can do that within the next couple of days, please do so. Next slide, please. So the highlights of the High-Speed Rail Network Act. The corporation would no longer be required to attempt to purchase. That's a biggie. This will shorten the early stages of acquisition process and enable faster expropriation of land. The minister can confirm the expropriation at any time within 2 years after issuing a notice of intention. Once confirmed, the taking proceeds and compensation discussions begin. There's 2 notices being proposed in this act, one of the right of first refusal and the other of prohibition on work. The act would allow the corporation to place an 8-year notice, up to an 8-year notice, on properties that it is considering expropriating for the high-speed rail network, giving it an option to buy the land later at a later time at the same price as a private buyer offers. This allows the government to assemble land without immediately expropriating it. If the owner later accepts an offer from a third-party buyer, they must give the corporation a copy of the signed agreement. The corporation then has 60 days to decide whether to buy the property itself on the same terms and price. And if it does, it must reimburse the third-party buyer's negotiation expenses. The corporation can ask the minister to freeze development on land the corporation thinks it may need for a high-speed rail line. Once that notice is registered, the owner or occupant may not perform any work on the property except for basic maintenance to prevent deterioration or keep it functioning normally. Work that was already underway before the notice was registered may be completed. The prohibition on work ceases to have effect after 4 years. That's when the minister must have the notice deleted from the office where it was registered. If a notice of intention is registered, any person authorized by the minister may, with reasonable time and notice, enter onto the property to appraise the value of the land and to verify that you haven't done any work subsequent to the notice. Any person who prevents access is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction. Next slide, please. Should Bill C-15 become law, there will be some notable changes to the expropriation process. The beginning of the process remains the same. The Crown registers the notice of intent and so on and so forth. But this time, the notice of intention can be sent via email to the landowner, or if requested by the landowner, a registered letter. And this was coming out of the mouth of the Minister of Transportation. The notice is registered in the appropriate land registry and published in the Canada Gazette and a local newspaper. So you do get some advance if you miss your email, but you have to be watching the newspaper. The landowner has 30 days from the date of publication in the Canada Gazette to file a written objection to the minister. There's no independent review person. It's the minister that's reviewing your objection. If the written objection is filed, the minister has 30 days to review it, at which time they can decide to proceed, modify, and withdraw the intended expropriation. After a 30-day window, the minister may issue a notice of confirmation, which finalizes the expropriation. Once the minister confirms the expropriation and the notice of confirmation is registered, the Crown must make a written offer of compensation to the owner within 90 days. This doesn't change. Next. I'd like to mention a section in Bill C-15. It's called Section 12. It's very hard to see in the omnibus bill. It's kind of hidden in there. It would give any federal minister, the authority to exempt specific individuals, businesses, or organizations from complying with many federal laws and regulations for up to 3 years, extendable to 6, in order to test new technology or regulatory approaches. This is not just for the high-speed rail. This is for across the board. But for the Alto high-speed rail project, this means that while the impact assessment itself can't be waived, important laws that protect the environment, waterways, and rail safety could be set aside. These acts are not found in Section 12's excluded list. I think it lists about 12 acts, or 20 acts that can't be excluded or exempted. There are some conditions, however, that must be met by the minister to enact the exemption for these purposes. The minister must be responsible for the act that he's exempting. It must fall under his portfolio. The exemption must be in the public interest. It must support testing that promotes innovation, competitiveness, or economic growth in the clean technology or financial technology sectors. So it's specific to those sectors. Benefits must outweigh risks with the proper oversight and safeguards in place to protect public health and safety and the environment. A feasible implementation plan must be developed. A 30-day public consultation is required, and the President of the Treasury Board must approve it. So the key takeaways here, in my view, the Bill C-15 creates a two-track system. Normal protections for most Canadians, and reduced rights and an accelerated process for communities in the high-speed rail corridor. The biggest changes for those The biggest changes are the notification process being via email, the removal of negotiation, the elimination of hearing of necessity, replaced by a 30-day ministerial decision, and the prohibition of work and the right of first refusal that can actually sit on the title for 8 years, folks. So now the minister did say that they would attempt to, if they want to expropriate land, they'd attempt to negotiate before they expropriated. But my question is, why is this written into the act if they were going to do that anyway? Compensation rules, including the 90-day deadline, remain the same, but landowners reach the point of no return much faster. These proposed changes are a major shift from independent, transparent expropriation processes to a faster centralized system with fewer landowner protections for those living within the train's path. Lastly, Bill C-15 gives the ministers the power to temporarily turn off many federal environmental safety and transparency rules through, though not the Impact Assessment Act, making it far easier for the Alto project to move quickly. These exemptions mean corridor communities could face greater environmental safety and land use risks for up to 6 years, with fewer protections and less ability to challenge the decisions that are being made.
In the order I'd be following Catherine, and of course now that I look at the picture I put on first, I think it is a little bit more lighthearted. If you don't know me, my name is Tanya Lemke. I've been selling local homes and waterfront property in the region for over 20 years. I understand the local land values, market trends, and what makes Rideau Lakes and the surrounding area completely unique, and I have spent my life bringing people into the area who fall in love with all that we have to offer. I'll be louder. I've always been so proud to call this area home. I also own and operate with my husband and my father-in-law a farm that's been in my husband's family for over 4 generations, and currently sitting in what I call the purple haze, or the oncoming path of destruction, also known as the Alto proposed corridor route. So I'm speaking to you today as both a real estate agent and a farmer whose land and livelihood, like many of the other people in the community, may be split in half. So I was glad I picked a portion of the picture of my niece because it shows the relevance of what we all consider to be home and important. If you can just switch to the next one. So talking from a real estate perspective, it's hard to put into a few short words the irrevocable damage that will be done should Alto be allowed to continue. Let's talk about permanent market damage. The infrastructure of this scale permanently alters our land desirability. I'm already seeing hesitation on behalf of buyers from out of the area due to the proposed southern route. It's also something that agents who now know about the train need to be disclosing to future buyers, even though in reality, we have no idea as of yet what the outcome will be over the next few years. The whole concept puts our market for both the buyers and sellers into a state of forced limbo while we wait to see where things play out and how government decisions will affect our lives. Next photo. I asked AI to create what it would look like in a community that was once thriving if you stuck a train in the middle of it, and this is what came up. Those are not my cows, but I feel that. Yeah. Well, we see how that happens, right? A high-speed rail corridor would reduce many things. So once news of this gets out through all of the corridors, it doesn't matter if it's Bankley, Kill, Hawkesbury, in our area all the way down. The buyer pool means less buyers would find this area in particular of any interest due to the construction of the rail corridor. And more importantly, the cutoff from services that some or all property owners face. There'll be a reduction, I think, in financing options for new buyers, and I'm worried about the ability to renew existing mortgages. We're seeing that out west already, where people trying to renew in BC are not being allowed to gain more mortgages. So if a home is in the corridor path, we have to think about all those aspects to it. Will insurance options decrease? We don't know what companies will do if you're a neighboring property or in the path of the corridor, how it will handle your wells, anything that happens once it's brought up and into the area. Future development potential. So one of the questions I wondered about is, will the townships or the federal government take development holds on properties that want to build or add on to their existing homes if they're in the proposed corridor? And then what will happen to properties currently with great access to primary roads that we've seen through Zoe's comment about the Indian Lake Road procedure? What happens if they get cut off from amenities and emergency services? How does that affect their bottom line and for their current value? And then how does that affect your ability to sell in the future when you're sitting under these timeframes of 2, 3, and 6 to 8 years? What does our township look like in future if a route like the Cataraqui Trail is chosen? So you can see from the mapping that's outside that Wendy's done, you'll see the entire township split in half, and the saying, born on the wrong side of the tracks, makes sense now. Once the property is bisected by a rail corridor, it's not a temporary inconvenience. It is a permanent market impairment, and then it becomes a question of where do you live on either side of the rail and where can you access those services. The next one, please. So, rural buyer psychology, still in the real estate vein. People come out to this area from the city market, they're looking for privacy, they're looking for peace and quiet, and for a chance to finally get away from busy city life. A high-speed rail eliminates those core motivations, and it will most definitely, I'm seeing it already, scare buyers away from the area that's within the proposed corridor. And if decisions for the route in this area are not being addressed until 2027, according to the Alto open house speakers, then what we'll end up seeing is a further softening of the market in our area. And this is extremely damaging since we're already in a downward market trend. It's hard to market tranquility and peace when they're projecting that we'll have 30 to 40, 300 kilometer per hour trains passing through our backyards. Next one, please. Generational wealth loss. This one is something I deal with all the time, and I love it when people talk about how long the cottage has been in their family or their farm has been in the family for multiple generations. So in this area in particular, many rural and cottage properties like we have here are retirement assets. Many are family inheritances, and they've been handed down through multiple generations. They have a story. Expropriation compensation rarely reflects that proper sale value. Once a corridor route is chosen, the land values already begin to decline significantly, allowing the potential for the government to negotiate at a lower than fair market value. And that's what I'm more concerned about, is by the time they come in to do a compensation, we're already being in a downward spiral and the market is dropping. So expropriation doesn't also take into account the future earnings that someone who owns a farm would have to consider. So once you're expropriated, can that farmer just move to a similar location? Is there enough land in the area for them to continue with their livelihood? Right. Same for homes expropriated. My concern in our rural area is that we are already experiencing housing crisis issues. So where do we move people to once they've been given notice? The next one. So on to the agricultural side. I only felt comfortable using our own property as an example, but you'll be familiar with it. This is happening all along the 1,100 kilometer route. So, and we don't know where the route is, but that's the proposed lane. Our farm is located just down Highway 15, which is here. The yellow is the outline of the entire property. And you can see we follow the northern corridor hydro route up in the proposed southern corridor route area. If it comes here, down through there, you can see how it splits the property in half. And we use every square inch of the property to maintain our farm. It would literally split our property in half. And this is not unusual, this is happening all the way along, but I'm just using our property for the example. So we offer grass-fed beef, honey, maple syrup, eggs, tallow skincare, farm tours, and we have plans for upcoming events that support other local farms and craftspeople. With the information of the proposed Alto route just coming into our awareness in late January, we feel pretty blindsided by the Canadian government's plans for our area's future. I know the heart-sinking feeling that everything that we've worked so hard for to put into place in the last 5 years can be taken away at the whim of a government official, most likely residing off in a city center somewhere. And I empathize with everybody in this community as we all grapple with this abrupt change to our lives. I don't care where they run this through the community. Everybody needs to stand together with their neighbor and just say no. I'm going to throw this lady, next slide, sorry, Rowan. I'm going to throw this lady under the bus because she deserves it. This is a photo of Sandra Papatello. Okay, she had a speech out that made the rounds, thank God for Facebook and people that are on it. Someone who has no idea of the damage that they are going to inflict upon small residential communities in the hopes that they'll be able to, as she said in her speech, be able to flit back and forth between major city centers for the day and then zip home for dinner. Okay, the absolute gall of that statement made me understand how out of touch most politicians are about where their food comes from. There's no dinner to be had if there are no farms. We rely heavily on regenerative grazing practices, and that means a connected movement throughout all of the farm. By splitting the land anywhere, we reduce the ecological integrity of all the systems. The wildlife corridors that rely heavily on our fields, the forests, and our ponds, many along the route face the exact same issues. This isn't just about acreage on paper. It's about how the land functions as an integrated living system and how we have all acted faithfully to be good stewards to our land and to our animals. Okay, to lose that connection would cause an unbelievable amount of heartbreak and anguish. When you divide farms, you don't just divide the land, you divide the community surrounding it. Okay, so the next, I would say I am pleased. The BFO, and I'm pleased as a farmer with the Ontario Farm Association, the OFA, and the Beef Farmers Association of Ontario. They've spoken out against the Alto train. I think a statement issued from the BFO says it best. You can't read it, but it says, Ontario's farmland is a finite and irreplaceable resource. For beef farmers, maintaining large contiguous land bases is essential for pasture, for feed production, livestock movement, drainage systems, and overall operational efficiency. The proposed corridor risks breaking farms into smaller, less viable parcels, disrupting tile drainage systems, critical to crop production, and creating long-term operational and financial burdens associated with fencing, crossing, and biosecurity concerns. All right, lastly, onto this. For my family, these are our cows. I love them, so. But you can also see the towers off on the far left corner, right? So you can just take this picture and throw a 12-foot fence up and kick them out and away from the pasture. For my family, along with many other families affected by the Alto route, this isn't a theoretical exercise. It's our entire future is being put on hold for the next year or two until they decide where the route for the HSR will go and who will be affected by the expropriation. The anxiety of waiting to hear anything is heartbreaking to watch. I hate seeing the communities go through it. I know the majority of people feel powerless to make things change into our favor, and that's why it's so important to take the next few weeks and get busy making those calls and writing those letters, and really now we're down to the next few days. So we can write that to the men and women who sit remotely making decisions about our area and our life. We can affect change if we stand up together, and I would ask for the next few weeks, you make your voice heard for yourselves and for your neighbors and for your community.
Katie's from Safe South Frontenac, and thank you so much for being here today to speak with all of us.
Listen, folks, all you need to do is harness the energy of the closest perimenopausal woman next to you who don't have 2 train tracks to give, and make your voices heard. Slide, please. So my husband and I had always been a country girl at heart and wanted to move from east end of Kingston to somewhere quiet. So we chose a dead-end dirt road off of Perth Road Village, and 12 years later, we're sitting on our couch, and Gord Bolton puts out his video, and we start looking at maps. And 2.4 kilometers north of my home is the Cat Trail, and 1.2 kilometers south of me is the hydro line. 1 kilometer this way through Marsh is the Alto Lake Education Center, and up here is Opinicon Road and the Queen's University Biological Station. Our home might not be expropriated, but we will certainly lose property value, and of course just, heartbroken to think of this land we thought that was protected, because 50 feet from our back door is NCC property, the Nature Conservancy of Canada, that bought 190 of my neighbor's 200 acres. So I'm invested, to say the least. And so Gord and I got together. We actually know of each other, and we started this committee, Save South Frontenac. And it's been a wild ride. It's been a long 6 weeks. And we have 2.5 weeks more to go. And I'll be very honest with you, we don't know what happens after the 29th. It's that next hurdle. Things might get heavier. But we do have some work to do. So I'm going to share with you through my education and my experience. It seems so big that it can be difficult to know where to begin or what to do, because who do you contact, how do you make your voice heard, etc. I want you to know that Save South Frontenac, along with our allies, including Rideau Lakes, have been so noisy that the government of Canada knows about you. So it's pretty funny what the people can do. I want to talk to you about your networks, platforms, and resources through advocacy, tools, and tactics. Tools and tactics are often interchanged with advocacy, but they're different. So we'll go to the first slide. Each slide is going to look the same, and I'm not in the habit of calling people tools. So under networks, we're going to call them relationships, all right? Through our family, friends, colleagues, our organizations we belong to, unions, local businesses, those are our relationships we have to leverage our issue. The goal is to elevate the issue, okay? So think about it this way when we talk about tools and tactics. The goal is to bake the cookie. The tool is the oven, and the tactic is the recipe. So when you are thinking about how you can engage, think about a process like that. So your relationships and then your tactics is to inform, to educate, and to ask. Because there are many people who still do not know about this high-speed train. And we all know it's not called consultation. Having just completed, ironically, a certificate in community engagement, development, and leadership. This would have made for an amazing end-of-year project. We need to make sure that we are measured and we can use the things available to us. The consultation does not look like what Alto has been proposing through their open houses. It actually asks the community, if you need, what do you need? And if you need the thing that's being proposed. Next slide. So your platforms to leverage. What and where do you have influence? What and where do you have access? So your tools for the leveraging are your laptop, are your paper and pen, is social media, and is your phone. Your tactics are a content campaign. Or if you are on social media and you have a Facebook group, you can boost your posts. So here's a funny something. We were really kind of tired of Kingston being very insensitive with their bullyish exuberance in saying that they would like a train station as close to Kingston as possible, which left us vulnerable. So we decided we would, right before Valentine's Day, send the mayor and Garrettson a Valentine. We put together a little reel that said, "Kingston, will you be our Valentine?" And we had committee pictures. So Blair from our committee was holding his chicken and then his little Valentine. And I was outside underneath the NCC sign with my Valentine holding it to Kingston. I boosted that post and it has like almost over 20,000 views. Whoa. And I tagged them all, the city of Kingston, Garrettson, Patterson, because we need to add a little bit of sugar into all of this and a little bit of sass. And I'll tell you that communication started fairly soon after. Okay. These things work. Next slide. There was no response, but there was no response as in, "Hey, South Frontenac, we love you too." That didn't happen. But what it has looked like is, and I won't say anything more, but communication from his office with some better understanding of how integrated our communities are, because there are many people in South Frontenac, probably like Rideau Lakes, where you work in Kingston and for the city, and how awkward is that? All right, resources to lighten the load. What can you practically contribute right now? There is money towards grassroots advocacy costs, but I'm not here with my hat out. But that is a resource that some people have to share. Your time, which also equates to your knowledge. What can you bring to this conversation? Space. Coming out of Alto's open house, a member of the Verona Lions Club was just so ticked off. He looked at me and said, "Anything you need, you let me know, and I have space for you." And I said, "Okay, if we need it, I'm going to take you up on that." So the tactics look like supporting the work, imparting your knowledge, and sharing space. It can seem very overwhelming, and it is. I'm just, 6 weeks ago, I had no idea I'd have to learn about trains and buildings and anything like that. I don't think any of us did. But it also goes to show you that we need grassroots support, as Tanya said, to keep putting the pressure on. I have also been told that in a few inboxes, including Steve McKinnon's, that Save South Frontenac and allied organizations are almost the topic of the day. So that is good, that's a positive. The other positive that I can bring to this conversation is that a couple of weeks ago, Chantal Hubert was talking with Rosie Barton, right, the At Issue, if you watch it. I'm a bit of a Chantal fan, so I'll just say that. And she had said that no government project, like any government project that doesn't have a shovel in the ground, can be cancelled. And apparently there was a little whisper off to the side, and it was like a high-speed train. So we can do this. It's going to take all of us. I've said that from the beginning. From all our own backgrounds and experiences, We can do this. It's going to be rough, but the next 2 weeks are really imperative as consultation wraps up. I'm so grateful to be, like, none of us should be here, but I've not been in this space before. It's beautiful, and it's good to be in community, and I am so proud of this Rideau Lakes team. I was talking with Rowan. At the end of January, and I still think it's funny. I'm like, so are you going to start up a Facebook group? She's like, oh, I don't know. And now we have a packed audience. So it is so important to keep this conversation going and to tell your neighbors and to get out there. And I'll be hanging around a little bit for some Q&A afterwards. I actually don't know what happens next, so I'm just going to pass the microphone off.
Can I have a cue?
We're going to have question period after. We just have a couple more things.
Oh.
Sorry, I don't mean to throw so much information at you, but I promise this is the closing. Yeah.
I'm not good at that.
Oh, okay, you have one more slide. Oh yeah, I have one more slide. So some questions to ask in any kind of advocacy work is the work already being done? And this is why we're actually kind of here today, because we started talking. It's so much easier to do the thing once, right? And to share the knowledge once, but it might have to be crafted towards a different audience. It also needs to be reflective of the community. We called ourselves Save South Frontenac, not because we're just concerned with South Frontenac, but we can't speak for Rideau Lakes. We're not from here. And I can't speak for the northern corridor because I don't live there. But what we were hoping to do is sort of like inspire others to do the work, but then what does that look like in your own communities? So do we need permission? As in, how do we do things well? How do we do things meaningfully? How do we do things measured? And that's hard to know when there is an unknown. Are we elevating or repelling people? That's a hard one. There's a lot of nasty comments on social media. And we have to figure out, as a committee, how we walk a line between free speech and people labeling each other. This is a really unfortunate time we're all living in, even on a global world stage. And so what is that long-term and impact goal? I will just give you my personal opinion, is that I'm not too sure. 10,000 people on Parliament Hill might bring attention to an issue, but you might tick off 100,000 people if you're there. But I'm not saying not to protest. I just don't know when that time is, and we might be figuring it out together. And so those are sort of filtration questions, right, of who you're looking to align yourself with, what the work can look like. And that is pretty much the idea of my last slide.
Okay, so on that note, I think it's important that we all remember that even if you don't end up getting expropriated, we are all one township. It's not just our backyards, for anyone that keeps getting that comment like I do. It's our farms, our homes, our heritage sites, our lakes, our lock systems, our trails, our businesses, our schools, our roads, our generational wealth, and it's our township and our community. It could be your neighbors, it could be your family down the road, it could be any of us. We all need to stand together. There's been enough division for a very long time, and it's up to us now to protect our neighbors and protect our township. So we already sort of breezed over this. We'll breeze over it again here. We will leave this up during question period in case anyone has some specific questions. Our next steps, please email your senators. It is going to be in the Senate on Monday. Email as much as you possibly can. Also, I will be here after for a little bit longer. I'm going to have my laptop. If you need help pinning the Alto map, come and see me. I will help you. difficult to get through it. It's kind of a pain, of course. And also we need to spread the word as much as possible. So now we will move into our question period. Please, again, keep your questions short. There's lots of people here. We also have people on Zoom that are going to be asking questions. Again, please give us some grace. We're not lawyers, we're not Alto, we're not politicians, we're not ecologists. And then we will be turning this microphone on over here in the corner. So if you have a question, if you could carefully sort of make your way over here. We want to make sure that all the questions get heard on Zoom too. So that's why we're asking people to come up to the front if you have a question, okay?
Hi, good afternoon. So thank you very much for the presentation. My name is Michael Merritt. People are doing incredible and very important work for our community. I made a couple quick notes, and so I don't want to take up people's time with questions. So, but I want to highlight a couple really important things as you continue the advocacy that you're doing. You're going to hear that Bill C-5 that passed last year is the reason this is happening. If you look back at those debates, it was about major projects. High-speed rail was never mentioned once. The government was given the ability to declare projects to be major, and that was about ports and mines and critical infrastructure. They designated major projects. They did not designate high-speed rail as one. The same thing is true with C-15. It designated a high-speed rail network act, and conservatives in the Bloc Québécois, and I think you'll find that you're going to see me very open to working with anyone on this who wants to do the right thing. I'm not very interested in their political affiliation if they understand what needs to happen to say against the High-Speed Rail Network Act, which does many of the things that would allow them to do the things that we don't want them to do with this train. $60 to $90 billion, and this number is important because everyone in this country has already paid billions of dollars. They talk about it being a public-private partnership. You have paid, and your neighbors have paid, and our neighbors in other provinces have paid for something that's a consultation that hasn't even studied the environmental impacts in our community. So this is going to be a cost that future generations will bear, and it is so important that we remember that we have a say, communities have a say, landowners have a say, neighbors have a say in what happens next. So if you care about this issue, and I know you all do because it's hot in here, you need to demand a clear position from every elected official. There's going to be lots of people running for municipal office this year in Rideau Lakes and Elizabethtown, Kittley, and Merrickville, Wolford. The mayors of each community in Leeds-Grenville. They become the councillors on the United Counties of Leeds-Grenville. They need to tell you now how they feel about Alto. MPs from every party along the corridor route, do you support Alto? Yes or no? Senators. There's senators for every province in the Senate. They need to declare if they support this project. Please write them. The last thing I want to tell you is that this is not over at the end of this month when this consultation is over. They haven't put a shovel in the ground. What the government doesn't want you to know is that it's up to them to decide. They pick the route. So the government, so the executive, the federal cabinet, which is Mr. Carney's government, they are going to pick. It will not come for a vote in the House of Commons. So we need to continue the pressure. You want to send me an email about it? Please do. And I'm going to share every single word that you tell me with Steve McKinnon, Minister of Transport. I'm going to share every word that you tell me with the CEO of Alto. So write MPs, but write them all. And right across this country. Write senators, right across this country. Your advocacy absolutely matters. I said that you should demand a position from everyone who was elected on how they feel about Alto. If it comes for a vote in the House, like we did on the amendment on C-15, I voted no. I'm opposed to this project, not just in my backyard, not just in your backyard, in anyone's backyard.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paula Banks, and I'm just going to ask you one favor. It is very important that you write the Senate. They are holding hearings March 10th and 11th in preparing for the next reading. Gordon and I will ask you to all share the same message. We want the bill to go back to the House for amendments. That is the message we want the Senate to get. You cannot make or ask the Senate to get rid of this bill, but you can ask them to send it back to the House for amendments. And then Mike was right. We can ask our MPs for help then, but we need to stall and buy some time with the Senate. Thank you.
Just make sure when you write your Senate, it has to be individually. You cannot CC them. You cannot do a mass email. I wrote 98 emails yesterday to each one, 98 last week again. Now, there's also, we have the list out here if you want. You can easily find them online. And we also have the NFF and committee for Tuesday and Wednesday. You can write them. There's only about 10 or 12 of them on that. So you need to get the word out there. Anybody else? Who has a question? Yeah, one question.
I agree with everything that's been said. At the same time, I want to make sure we don't fall into the trap of picking a route when you actually don't want the Alto Trail in general, ever, anywhere. So that we have to make sure that it's not a fight between the different groups. The other thing is, like, I guess it's on strategy or tactic. There's a bigger question and more macro question, or two or three. First of all, are they overstating the amount of passengers and the number of trains that they do?
Yes,
Grossly exaggerated, and this is the Mirabelle factor coming back again. The other thing is, how can this, all those millions of dollars be used better? So maybe we should concurrently be trying to promote other kinds of work out of this money. For example, if they're so interested in trains, well, there's a big problem with Churchill, and they need to upgrade their trains for the freight trains, for the agriculture and minerals work that they're trying to get done. That's a huge project, and they like huge train projects. Well, there's one. Okay. And then there's housing. The housing proposals by Carney were very nice, but they were tiny compared to how much is needed. So this is more construction. They seem to like construction and giving out construction projects.
We just might have questions, if that's okay.
So one of the things that we really also need to do is counter Alto's really silly advertisements. So if you can have an amazing culinary experience, like zipping across from Toronto to Montreal and home again, to Tammy's point, is they're ripping up A1 grade agriculture to do that. So every time they say that this is like a national interest project, and the reason why, there's an actual definition as to why this is a national interest project. It puts Canada on the world stage, and infrastructure projects and things like that. So that's why it's classified. But the average person like me didn't know that 6 weeks ago. So when I hear national, a lot of people still think that this stupid train is running like West Coast to East Coast. So we have to make sure that it's, and they're talking about national unity. Well, it's also very divisive. So every time you see that or hear that, counter Alto's message.
Well, first off, I want to thank all these people who I want to thank them personally for two reasons. Firstly, our property will, if it goes through the lower hydro corridor, will absolutely cut off our property. No question. The second reason is that, thinking only personally when I first was introduced to this, I thought having traveled a lot in Europe and elsewhere and seen high-speed trains, I thought, a high-speed train is a really good idea. We really should have a high-speed train. But I'll leave here today saying, no, we absolutely shouldn't, even if it affects somebody other than myself. And I think that's the message I've got today, and I thank you. My question is that I believe there is a Ontario law that prohibits any owner of property from denying access to another person's property if it is other than a seasonal residence. So for people who have lakefront property, as I do on Rideau, mine's a permanent resident, I'm a permanent resident. People who are seasonal residents are the ones that are going to get hit the hardest if that law holds. So my question is anybody familiar with that law? It was in the Alto website, and it was mentioned at the open house meeting in Perth the other day, that law exists. So one of the things that perhaps, for those of you who are better at this than I am, I'm too old to understand how you get into all these documents, but if we knew what that law was, it might be exploited to our benefit. So thank you very much.
I sent my letter into the Senate this morning, so my clerk recognized that. But my question is, I uploaded it to the Rideau Lakes Against the Train site in a docx format, which means you can look at it, download it, change whatever you want, simplify it, sign it, and send it in. It gives you a starting point or an idea of what you might want to put in the letter. Feel free to think it's extreme or change whatever you want. I'm open. I just wanted to upload it to give people somewhere to start.
How do we find it? I'm sorry.
It's on the Rideau Lakes Against Alto site. It's posted, so you'll see it. It's an uploaded file section. It's in the file section. So it's just letter to Senate against Bill C-15.
So what is your name?
I'm Shelley. Nice to meet you. Yeah. I hope that helps. Thanks.
Write your opinion. You only need 3 or 4 lines. Don't have to make a 10-page letter. Like, just get your feeling out there. It could just be a paragraph. It makes you feel personalize it.
Okay, I think probably everybody knows who I am. I'm the mayor of Rideau Lakes. And even though our council doesn't always agree on issues, I have to say that we're 100% against long high-speed trains. For everyone's information, our council has passed 8 resolutions opposed. We're in the process of doing a mail-out. We have a petition. First, we're against the southern corridor. And we're asking Alto, if they're going to push forward with this, that they consider alternate routes. Now, I attended both sessions in Perth, the afternoon session and the evening session. There was standing room only for most of that time. And at those sessions, I tried to corner different Alto people to sort of say, here's what we need to do. We need to extend the consultation period. And I think that we may see some success in that beyond the end of the month. So that would be a good thing. I've asked them to make sure that if they're going to continue to consider the southern corridor, they narrow the corridor. Because right now it's 10 kilometers across, I believe, and they're talking in terms of at some point in time perhaps reducing it to 1 kilometer, which means a lot of the folks in this room will suddenly breathe a bit of a sigh of relief, but I agree with the thought that we all need to support each other. And finally, the thing that I've asked them for is I've insisted that we deserve a town hall type of meeting in our township. And that should be at Alto at the Lions Hall. And if we're successful with that, we want those people there in person. We want them to make a presentation. And then we want them to answer questions. And it has to be civil. And this meeting certainly has been civil. And I appreciate the work of all the presenters, because you've done a great job.
It's their duty to consult.
It's their duty to
Especially
consult. I keep hammering home on that, this is unfair to our taxpayers. And I do want to thank Michael Barrett and Scott Reed, who were both at the sessions in Perth, and they continue to advocate for our region. And we can think that this will never happen, but if we don't stand up and work against it now, it may well happen. And it may be an issue for us for years, because we will not know if and when the process goes forward. The other thing I wanted to mention was that I have provided a notice of motion at the county council level, asking them to oppose the project. And of course, one of those concerns is if Alto, for example, decides they're going to go down 416 or 401, then all the other communities at that end of the county will suddenly be impacted as well. So I don't want to see us pit one part of the county against another part of the county. Okay? So that I'm working on that area as well, and we'll see what happens. But I do encourage everybody, and I thank you folks for organizing this meeting.
Not really a question, more of a statement. It's my understanding that expropriation of land for cemeteries is not favorable for governments, and they generally shy away from that. If anybody has, if this track goes, exactly, relatives, anything like that, it's a little bit more than the topic, but there are lots of generational families who do have family buried on the property. It is definitely something to consider.
Ooh, I like that. Make sure that you pin that on the Alto app. Pin everything. Pin your barn, pin the graveyard, pin everything.
Question for, I guess, the township, I see some folks in the council. When the federal government expropriates the land, do they pay tax? Do they pay property tax to municipalities? Because if not, does that mean then we as residents pay more tax to compensate for the expropriated land?
Yeah.
Anyone from the township?
Federal government, the government pays what's called a grant in lieu, and it's usually significantly lower than what the normal property taxes would be. 95%.
Okay, so we will end up paying more taxes.
Yes.
Does anyone else have
Any more questions from anybody in the room?
I think I'm loud enough that I can hear. My question is really, under what legislation is this process going through? I thought it was critical infrastructure. Is this a separate bill, not part of critical infrastructure? I think Michael maybe can answer that question. Because this is confusing for me. Because realistically, if this is not part of critical infrastructure, does it not have to go through all the environmental laws and everything else that's involved with it? So is it part of the critical infrastructure package? So this got done by the Trudeau government in advance rather than the Carney government?
Yes.
I just wanted the answer to clarify this.
So, the High-Speed Rail Network Act that is created as part of Bill C-15, which is before the Senate, which was advanced by Mr. Carney's government. That is what gives the powers that are going to do the types of things that were described. That's specifically will allow the government to make these decisions. But there's something really important about this. They haven't made the decisions. They have the power to make them. So even when this consultation is over, you talked about baking a cookie or baking a pie. It's not baked yet. It's not baked. They've got the recipe. Okay, and one thing they're missing from the ingredients is a social license.
Yes.
And we need to deny them a social license to do this. So this is absolutely a future decision of the government. It will be made by the executive, so cabinet, and then it will be in the Gazette, the Canada Gazette. But there's nothing in the Gazette yet about Alto. There's nothing in there about this being a a major project. They've listed their major projects initiatives. This is not one of them. So should this bill pass the Senate in its current form, then they're able to make those decisions, but we will deny them the license through the continued pressure and advocacy that's begun at a grassroots level, which is the best way to go, and we'll continue to do that. But we need to make sure that that pressure is sustained by everyone who holds elected office and everyone who talks about it. And if we have a federal election this year, we need to make sure that people in British Columbia and people in Prince Edward Island understand that they're going to pay for this too. So that's part of what I want to do, and I know that MP Reid and MP Cranton-Nyman want to do, is get this before a parliamentary committee. We want everybody to know what this means. And that also means that anyone well, I'll tell you, the Conservatives in the Bloc Quebec law voted to scrap the High-Speed Rail Network Act in C-15. The question is, for anyone who wants to run for the NDP or the Liberals, and those are questions you need to ask them, okay? Like I said before, this isn't you need to vote for me because of whatever. You need to vote based on what sustains your personal convictions. We need to ask them, why did they not take out the High-Speed Rail Network Act from Bill C-15, which is a massive bill, last week when we gave them the chance to do it? And if they get the chance to govern after an election, should one happen this year, are they going to continue with Alto? And we need to tell them, no matter who gets elected, this project cannot happen.
To be measured from the very beginning. When I was sort of poking fun at Kingston, I used to live in Kingston. The rail system sucks. It's not good. We need passenger first legislation. Yes. We need new track, or we need an investment in existing track, which the Transport Action of Canada came out with reports 10 years ago that really, so here's your other point. VIA is owned by Alto. They're like one and the same. Alto is VIA, VIA is Alto. It's the same arm of government. We cannot trust this government with a brand new shiny thing that's very fast if they can't get VIA right. So what we are advocating for is a passenger first modern rail system that does not have to be 300 kilometers an hour. It can be higher speed. It can be more frequent trains. And it can go along the existing track, which I hate saying this, but it's already sort of damaged along there anyways because there is track. So we do deserve reliable rail in Eastern Ontario, but it can look differently. We don't need it to go through a northern or southern corridor. We need to keep it along the 401.
Wendy, we have a question from the kitchen.
Yeah, I have a question from the kitchen.
That's Clarence Gay Hager, I'm from Cala, Cheeky's Rideau Lakes Association. If you don't know Cala, we run from Newberry Lake right down to Whitefish. We have a question in our area about our American residents. I've been sending out things to Cala, and I've been getting notes back from America. Can you pin me on the map? Can you go sign that postcard for me? So it's kind of difficult for them when political things come into play. Sometimes they're allowed to get involved, and sometimes they're not. They are paying their taxes, and they want to be involved in this. So can you answer that question for me? What do I tell them?
I think they should go to the map and they should just pin their cottage. And you can go to the map and pin everything around it. And as a township, supposed to be sending out a letter to everybody.
And if they want to have their say, can they go ahead and they'll be?
Why not?
Can they sign petitions?
I don't think they can sign a petition. I think it has to be Canadian. Canadian citizenship. But they can certainly go online and give them their opinion. They have a cottage. They are a taxpayer.
Yeah, and there are a lot of actually our family are generational cottages right from the edge of the trail right back on Iron Bridge Lane to ours.
Okay.
So, but there are some American generational cottages in there too.
Okay.
So, okay.
I'll try to be very brief. I think the overall feeling in this community is our utter and undivided love of this whole area. And if I could suggest to the committee, when we came in to look for a place 17 years ago, we drove through Shafey's lots. That's what sold us. As far as I know, if they use this southern route, Shafey's lots is going to change a lot. The history, the people, and we've had people visit us from all over the cities and the United States saying what a beautiful area you people live in. All you got to do is stand on the south side of Clear Lake and look north. You see the storms all heading towards Perth, Smith Falls, Ottawa. And we're basking in the sunshine. It's a special area for the heart. And I know people who are losing sleep. They can't believe what is about to be proposed. And I think we all have to urge our committee as well to put that as a section, a part of their presentations as well, when you're talking to whomever you might be able to influence. Thank you.
My question is for Michael. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think there's no better person to really speak about this than your Polyev. And I'm wondering, when will the Conservatives sort of bring this to the forefront as a party to sort of give us exposure or maybe sort of support from that perspective?
Very soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know there's been a lot of discussion about running elected officials about this, and I think most people in this room, like myself, have been very busy doing that. But it occurred to me recently, and I've started writing the media,
Yes.
CBC.
Yes.
Like the people in Alberta, they don't know that they're going to be paying whatever it is, $9,000 per household for this, right? But if we can get the word out on media, and so on CBC particularly, then that might just help sway the votes in Senate a little.
Where was that figure from? Like, can we use that figure? $9,000?
Somebody posted it on Facebook. I'll have to look it up. But I've already tried sending emails to the Victoria Sun out to BC. You've got it. Like, I started reaching out to different places all across. So,
There's a question over here, sorry.
okay.
Hi, I'm Janet, and our farm is in the corridor. At the Perth session, I asked one of the Alto guys about how it was going in Quebec, and he went. So it occurred to me to write to somebody because they're getting great pushback in the rural regions, and to contact them, but of course there's a language barrier. Well, I'm guessing because my written French is no good. So I didn't know whether Mr. Barrett's office might be able to help us with that. Get a French letter in French to communicate with people in the same situation all along the corridor.
Yeah, Ross? Yeah.
We have been contacting members of Quebec, we've been contacting municipalities. I've called 22 municipalities along the bridge trying to get them to promote our houses, and we've also been trying to translate our messages into their Facebook group. And we have been getting a lot of feedback, so you are right, that's great.
Okay, so I just have a basic question. Some of us might not know in the room how to get the list of the senator's emails. Like, how can we do that?
I've posted it so many times on Facebook, but we do have some information out here. You can photocopy the list and throw it. If anyone wants
The documents of all the senators, all the MPs, all of everybody, email to them. Send an email to me at nohighspeedtrain@gmail.com. It's on the wall outside.
It's on the wall. Take a picture of it. Anybody else? Question? Stand up,
I have another question, but I don't have it. What is the purpose of this route? Is this just to connect Ottawa to then to Montreal? Because we've been only talking about going from Toronto to Montreal. This route has no way of going to either one of those centers. This is a route right to Ottawa.
Yeah, it's Ottawa to Peterborough and Peterborough to Toronto. And we really know who's going to ride the train.
That's why this route is going this way, is to connect Ottawa to this route?
Yeah. The reason I guess the southern route came on and it loops down, it doesn't stop to anybody. And I guess the reason that initially was out there, put out on Facebook, people think it was 3 times, the northern route was 3 times harder to get through with the rock. And there's less rock in the South Frontenac to get through. That's, I think, what maybe initiated it.
Kingston wanted to stop.
So, and Kingston kept pushing for a stop, the Liberal government down there, pushing for a stop. So, I don't know why it came on there. There was
Can I add something to that about the cost of the north versus the south? Admiral Pyatt has done excellent work on that.
Yeah.
Take the mic.
Yeah, we don't want to, there's a mic beside you. We don't want to pit the north against the south. It really should be like improving via rail. We don't want to pit one against the south, because that's what they're saying all over Facebook. It's starting to divide us, and that's what they want. We got to band together.
But if I can say something regarding the north versus the south route, I know Andrew Hyde has done a lot of work on that, and he's shown that what Alto is saying is totally incorrect.
Yes.
And he's not really trying to pit the south against the north. What he's trying to say is that in terms of the geological work that's been done today, Alto is totally incompetent. That's what he's trying to say. Okay, if I could add a couple of other points, and I have a question probably for Michael Barrett. First of all, when we talk about a $90 billion cost, we have to look at the interest and carrying cost of that. We can see from our deficit that our government's currently running, if you do the books properly, it's going to be over $100 billion this year, the deficit. So a project like this is going to be all on borrowed money. If you look at carrying $90 billion for 50 years, even at a paltry 2% interest rate, you're looking at $140 billion. So right away, this is not a $90 billion project, it's a $230 billion project with zero cost overrun right now. So add on top of that a cost overrun and the interest on that cost overrun, this is going to be just enormous, the cost of this. The second question is I have for the committee. I was kind of dumbfounded when Kingston started pushing a south route and not being against this project totally. Because if via rail, any of the passengers that are currently on the Montreal, Kingston, Toronto corridor, if any of those passengers move to another system, say for example, moving between Toronto and Ottawa via the Alto route, now the problem that's going to arise for VIA is that they're really not going to be able to make any money on the current line, and it's likely that service is going to be totally shut down once the Alto comes online. So my question is, have we approached the mayors of Kingston, Brockville, Cornwall, Brockville, Oshawa, Belleville, and tried to get them on side that if this project goes ahead, they could probably lose their rail service?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Watch the news tomorrow night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Final question.
Because Kingston doesn't even know what, I think people don't, if you're not in it, your blinders are on and you don't hear. So there has been no word from maybe Belleville, just because Tyndale is sort of in and around there, but not Dan, not Brockville, not along the way that would say, hey, we could use a rail system as well. What we need is a joint position with the city of Kingston so that it will inspire the other urban centers to put the pressure on to do the same. So I'm not saying anything more than that, but
Okay.
here's out for the news. news tomorrow.
Okay, final question to Michael Barrett. If this C-15 does pass, and now we have these new expropriation laws for people going to be involved with the Alto route. In the 80s, the government spent a lot of time and money bringing in the repatriating the Constitution, so that, as I understand it, Canadians are equal. Race, religion, color. But now, in terms of expropriation, we have two different Canadians. Those who are going to be expropriated by Alto, and those who would be expropriated by someone else. Is it possible that something can be done constitutionally to fight this change in the expropriation laws?
So you can take anything to the Supreme Court, and you can have a constitutional challenge. The timeline that we're working in is not one where we want our rights to have been violated. I appreciate the premise of your question, but I feel like we'd be in the position to exercise that route only after our rights have been violated. And so we need to get in front of this now, and that's why I voted to take the High-Speed Rail Act out of C-15, because they shouldn't have the powers. They talked also about what they call the sandboxes that they create that allow ministers to exempt individuals or corporations from any federal law except the criminal code for 6 years. And so we were able to limit some of that through exemptions, but why are they looking to take all of these powers instead of just following the regular set of rules? So we need to make sure that we stop it in its tracks, so to speak, before we have to take it to court. And the other thing that to talk about the carrying cost of the debt on $50 billion, if we believe that this is a public-private partnership and that it's only going to cost $90 billion, which I don't believe, and that we would only have to pay as taxpayers $50 billion, just use a round number, the cost per year for our lifetime, for our children and grandchildren's lifetime, would be conservatively $2 billion per year ongoing in interest, and that's before we start to subsidize the price of tickets, because they're not going to be able to charge what it costs to actually ride it. So this isn't just $90 billion, and that number someone asked, that came from Alto's report that they gave to the government last March. So that $90 billion number is Alto's, but that number is low. And we're going to pay in perpetuity, on top of what it costs, $2 billion a year.
Michael, if we're able to get the Senate to send the bill back to the House for amendments, what do you think is the likelihood of us getting some amendments if we apply pressure to the MPs?
So it's a great question. Thanks, Paul. The amendments that we want, we proposed at committee, including the amendments to all of the objectionable things, including to the changes to the Expropriation Act as it relates to high-speed rail. Those amendments that we proposed and that the Bloc Québécois proposed were defeated with the NDP and the Liberals working together to advance this. And we have to be really clear. We gave them a path to get C-15 passed. It's a really big bill, right? This wasn't C-15 isn't the Alto bill. It included all of the money that the government's going to run on for the rest of the year. And so instead of having a government shutdown like you see in the US, we said, make these amendments and you can have your C-15. And that's why the bill passed on division. We forced votes on the issues that mattered in the immediacy, including on high-speed rail. So what's the likelihood? If the Senate sends it back, the government's going to see that there isn't a clear path through the Senate. So that's the biggest red flag for them. But now also, Minister McKinnon, Prime Minister Carney, members of their cabinet are going to continue to get individual letters and emails and phone calls from people in this room and in Frontenac and in Hastings and throughout the affected region. And that's why this advocacy campaign using the tools that were outlined is so important, because they need to understand that political decisions come with political responsibility, and that they are responsible for their decisions. And so we need to remind them of that. So the advocacy to the Senate in the next couple of weeks, it matters. It truly does matter. But if it does pass the Senate, your advocacy matters even more at that point, because then we have to leverage all of the things we talked about today to make sure that it doesn't get to the point where we have to have a court challenge. We're going to hold democratically elected representatives accountable for their decisions, and we are going to demand elected representatives, like you have demanded of me, that we make sure that the voice of our community is heard. We don't take instructions from Ottawa. Ottawa takes instructions from us.
So I'm not a.
I know, but just, yeah. I'm just because I'm in conversation with People Justice about.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I know that we'll need to. And the question was, what would be the basis for a legal challenge? I'm not a lawyer, so I can't provide, what avenue we would use to attack the legitimacy of this attack on us, basically. We'll continue to attract and to invite people to participate. What I am looking to do is to work with MPs to, across party lines, to have this brought to the House for standing committee hearings so that there is national exposure on this, and with that to bring experts and legal experts that could speak to the illegitimacy of the type of action the government's looking to take. And so we want to identify who our allies are in this process during that phase. So have them come to a parliamentary committee and pronounce on it. We want to hear why. We want to hear the experts explain to the government why what they're doing is not right, but also why it's not just. And so that's the avenue that I hope to address it as a legislator, is to bring it for open hearings with a parliamentary committee, so that that accountability measure is exercised.
Okay, I'm going to be taking questions from the audience in the back here. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and I'll come up to you with the mic.
So I had a question for Katie. In your presentation, you talked about messages that are repelling people instead of attracting people. And I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit, because one of the things I see constantly is the comments on the online stories, basically dismissing us as a bunch of nibbies and all the nonsense like that. Because people in cities, I mean, I'm new to this area, I lived in a city for most of the last 25 years, I can understand their perspective somewhat. Yeah. So, I mean, how do we avoid repelling those people? And I think, if I can make one point on that, I mean, the way that C-15 is proceeding, this sets a dangerous precedent for any future project in this country, because whether it's this government or a future government, if we remove the rights of property owners, it's not their property today, but it'll be their property in the future. And I think that's how maybe you get to the people in the cities who maybe don't vote the same way we do, or think the same way we do.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to give like 10 seconds. If you're thinking that you need to leave because we are going on 4 o'clock, then feel free to leave. And then if you're staying a little longer, then just stay a little longer, so that we're not like interrupted. So yeah, 10 seconds to beat it to the door.
vice versa.
What was that?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is that better?
That's better.
All right, perfect. Let's get rid of that. I just want to know if there's any data, credit card data, whatever data that they can aggregate that tells me how many people from Toronto have visited Quebec
I
City
wanted
and
to ask that question. How many people are going to ride it?
Yeah. So basically, the data is easy to get. Hotel data is available. So how many Torontonian area code people have paid for hotels in Montreal, Toronto, and Quebec City, and vice versa, year over year over the last 10 years?
Yeah,
Yes.
Go ahead.
I asked that question at Rideau House. Because I ride the train to Brockville and asked if my ridership would be included in that because I get on the train and either St. Paul or Brockville. And the Alto rep told me that they use data from Europe.
Wow. Because I'm new to the area. I've only been, we live in the Lyndhurst area. It's been about 9 years. Yeah. Grew up in Toronto, sorry. But I can tell you, living and working downtown Toronto for most of my life, I rarely saw a Quebec plate. I rarely rarely saw anybody who spoke French, and that's working in the financial district in Toronto.
Yeah. The different mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're people. That's not to say that they don't get along.
No, they're
That's
just.
not it. They're.
Yeah.
I think it's not. But
It's Toronto and Quebec. Like a lot of the marketing ads are in Toronto Life. They're in Toronto Star. Like they're in Toronto-based areas where they are like. And this is also a project that is to appease Quebec as well. So that's like Cadence, I believe, is like a French company, etc. And I don't want to put us against Quebec because we need to support Mirabel. But yeah, there's probably some good data on that. And when we talk about 70 trains a day, that's at its peak. So don't think that, like, not that I'm justifying this, but at its peak, Alto wants all your stats, like everything that they're pushing is in like 25 years. So in 25 years, 1.2 kilometers south of me, there could be 70 trains going each day. There is about like 1,000 people per train going back and forth times 365 days. You have to remember that a generation is also 18 years. And this project, they are estimating, won't break even until 2044. So there is also that.
We have a question right here. At the beginning of this, someone, I believe it was you, Catherine?
Catherine? Thank you, Catherine.
At the beginning of this, you alluded, or somebody alluded to the fact that they can expropriate our property, but then also down the road, they can decide they still want our property and come back in like 3 or 4 years later and take our property still. So,
I'm going to try to explain this without getting into too much Catherinism. So at some point, we're going to find out the corridor if we're going to go the corridor. What I'm interested is that when the notice of intentions to be sent out, or the notices to do with stop work in particular, or first right of refusal. That's when I think that they'll start issuing those notices. The intent might happen a little bit later when they actually have the engineers determine exactly where those trains are going to go. So when they give you a notice of work stoppage, it's on your property for 4 years. The minister has it for 4 years. Then he has to remove it. Now you have to think about it. It's a 1,000-kilometer long line corridor. There's going to be a lot of people affected, right? So how quickly is that going to come off if at the end of the day they don't use your property? That's my concern with, especially with the first right of refusal, right? The government can use your business longer than.
and you can't do any work on your property.
You can do work on your property for maintenance, No, can't hear you. You can if you want, but you won't be compensated for it.
Just one comment. My name's that's my wife speaking. Basically, the president's room says what the poor schmucks of Pickering never got their land back. You never built anything. I live in Toronto for 29 years, so I'm with my friend over there. So don't stone us. But basically, those poor guys, they took their land, and if you drive around that area to this day, there's still protests out there. And they never got their land back. Never. So this is just, and to the point that Katie was making about, this is really just a way, once again, funneling vast quantities of taxpayer dollars to give. Because all the companies are involved with it, and I've dealt personally with SNC Lavalin. They are bad news in everything, both in terms of what the governance and what I came across in engineers. I'm one of the bad guys. I worked in nuclear, oil and gas, basically start slowing me down. But I ran into those guys, and they're bad news. So I'm totally with you guys, and let's go. Now, if you need any help with some of the technical stuff, then I know a little bit less.
Okay. For now, this is really looking.
The trains give off a certain amount of vibrations and noise when they go through. And I don't know if we've looked into the protections that the Chinese have with their trains and the damage and the effects of the vibrations and the sounds of these trains that go through the local environments. I mean, we know it's going to affect the wildlife, but what are some of the possible effects for the humanity who live around these trains? I just thought maybe that's something we could look into and do some further research, because I'm genuinely concerned, and I know that that purple area goes right through Elgin, and I have a lot of kids in that area that I love deeply, that I would be very concerned about their development in the future, as well as now. So, yeah, thanks.
In England, in 2010, the council, in England, they have humus stones as a barrier for the noise. In some areas, in high frequency.
And how well does that work, and how much access?
It was presented, I just touched on to see what they do, another type of frequency, what they do, and it's mostly recommended in high urban areas. So,
Hello, I'm sorry to be focusing on Indian Lake Road, because I know this is affecting a lot more than that, but the prospect of, there's about 170 properties supplied by that road. If it goes through, it's going to cut road access off. Now the prospect of all those properties becoming water access, I don't see how the marina, even if it's connected somehow, is going to be able to accommodate all the boat traffic. What it's going to do to the lake is going to be horrible. And these homes were not designed to be water access. To have a water access home, it has to be heated differently, all that. You're not going to, the electrical lines are not going to be able to be maintained, because if you get a bad storm, there's no way Hydro's going to come in with a heavy equipment to put new poles up and that sort of thing. So you might as well forget about the Hydro, because once it's down, it's down. Unless the government's going to provide grants for everybody to put solar panels up. If you get propane delivery, you can't, there's no propane truck going to be made out there. So I just think it's a big nightmare. Indian Lake's going to look like the 401. Anyway.
I'm with you. I live on Rideau Road, so we're in the same boat. Literally. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Are we trying to do any campaigns where we have signs on our lawns? Because that's the way I hear about things when I don't know about them.
So we have talked about that. and we will be talking about that more with the township. There's also a working committee going on. We'll get there.
You'll hear about it.
Yeah.
So are you raising money to make this?
We aren't personally. If people want to donate money, they can go to SaveSouthFrontend.ca. They can donate.
Do you want to talk on that? Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Hi everyone, Dustin Bullock. I'm one of the councillors here in Rideau Lakes. I don't have a whole lot to say, but I do know I'm on the working group with the committee group here right now, meeting the township and the working group. I know we have been working on, like on the township side, the mayor mentioned sort of what we've already done there in terms of mailers and stuff coming out. I think the working group's going to keep working together to sort of support one another between the township and what the community's doing. And right now, sort of the next things coming up for us at council is going to be Alto coming to speak to council on Wednesday, the 11th. So if you have this coming Wednesday, so it's virtual. So you can, if you have questions you want members of council to be asking, please send it to us between now and Wednesday, so we can ask those questions. Yeah, is there anything else? I don't have a whole lot else to add. You guys have covered a whole lot of ground and done a whole lot of work, so I just really appreciate everything you guys are doing and for everyone that's come out here today. So, thank you.
Anybody else? Well done. Well done.
Thank you all for coming. More information on the tables outside. The email address is on the wall if you want to email me. I will